Today you have questions.
And we may or may not have answers. It should be a fun one. Welcome to the Pilgrim Song. Hello and welcome to the Pilgrim Song, episode 25. I'm Alexander.
I'm Charlie.
And this is where your two friends, interracial friends talk about Jesus. I forgot our own slogan. This is going to be great. All right, so as we jump into our podcast, this is a pretty big episode this week. Very excited. 25. Wow. It's been almost half a year. How you feeling, Charlie?
I'm feeling great, man. It's been I haven't been on all 25 episodes,
That's
but
true.
It's been a good chunk of those.
Well, it's your half.
So,
it's
I don't
your
know.
podcast.
What do you think? When you reflect upon 25
When I
episodes?
reflect on 25 episodes, I've enjoyed getting to have people on here and we just talk about stuff. I think we'll talk a little bit more about this in the QA, but there's so many things that need to be talked about when it comes to how we operate in our churches, understanding Bible study, and I particularly like our prayer and fasting one. I love that one.
Yeah.
So there's just been a lot of cool stuff to talk about.
Who's your favorite guest so far?
Well, obviously my co-host, Charlie. So, but yeah, welcome to our episode for this week. We are going to be talking about a lot of different things, but just going off of 25 episodes in. Next week we'll also be launching our blog, the Pilgrim Song blog, and there will be articles up there every week, and we'll be selling merch from there in the near future. So get your stickers and. We might get a mug. Who knows? It'll be fun. But very excited for that. So we hope that you will not only visit the site and all that stuff, but also just if you like what we do here, just share it so other people can see. And we want to be an encouragement to them as well. So as we hop into this, again, you probably know this is a Q&A if you listened last week. So you're really excited for some deep questions.
I am, yeah. So we got a good mix of questions. Some spiritual, some just general life stuff.
Yeah,
it'll be good.
It's gonna be a hoot. It'll be really fun. We're gonna have some shout outs as well because you listen, you responded to Instagram, you deserve a shout out on the show. All right. So our first question came a little bit a while ago, and this is our formal apology from Charlie and Alexander to David Maxon. Thank you for listening so much. Thank you for texting us about it. We're just really bad at responding. So he sent us a question back during episode 18. Episode 18, thank you. Episode 18, which talked about Sunday morning Christianity and just how it's a sham. And part of that was encouraging transparency among each other, that we don't just show up with a face and we're like, oh yeah, I'm doing well, I'm doing good. When in all honesty, we could be doing horrible. We could be struggling with sin. We could be just struggling with something else and being honest with that. So he asked us the question of how do we encourage transparency, both in ourselves and outside of that. So you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. For me, it's a very cliche line, but it's, be the change that you want to see within the church. So if you want to encourage people to be transparent, you yourself have to be transparent. If I want my family to open up and talk about things, I have to be willing to be the first one to open up and talk about things as well. And set up those discussions where we can sit down in intimate groups and talk about those kinds of things. But you got to be willing to start that. So I think that's a good place to start to encourage is, you yourself be more open and be more willing. So, and if you're the first person to do it and you're the only person doing it, it's definitely going to be awkward at first. But hopefully, from that, other people will see your example and, you'll be surprised when you open up and share something that you're struggling with, how many people will come up to you and try to relate to you on that and maybe open up and tell something from their past as well, or something that they're struggling with. So.
That's true. Yeah, and my answer pretty much goes right along with that as well. I pulled from one of my favorite movies of all time, Remember the Titans, and there's this conversation between Julius and Bertier, and they're mad, frustrated at each other. They're trying to quickly meet each other because they were forced to by their coaches, and finally Julius is just talking about his lack of leadership as a captain, and basically Bertier is frustrated because Julius doesn't give an effort, all this type of stuff. And Julius responds attitude reflects leadership, Captain. And that line has always hit me in the movie. And I think it really applies to this situation because a lot of times we are looking for, as Charlie mentioned, other people to be transparent first. You be transparent first, and then I have plenty of things to share. There's plenty of things to talk about. The reality is, if no one else is sharing, and this is what we're supposed to be doing for one another, bearing one another's burdens, serving one another, outdoing one another, and showing honor, we're the ones who have to step up first.
Yeah.
So the best way to encourage transparency, from both of our perspectives, you move first. Yeah. You do it first. So, good question. Thank you for asking, David. And we hope again that's something that we're both trying to push for as well. So it's an ever going battle. We need to keep struggling towards it. So, anything else you want to say about that?
That's it on that one.
All right. So we're going to come right back. We have again a bunch more questions. Thank you guys for listening to our little opening. We'll be right back. Our next couple of questions come from a good friend and loyal listener, Andrea. You're the real MVP. Thank you for these questions. So, her first question is, do you have any tips on overcoming social anxiety when speaking with brethren? Sometimes I really want to speak to people I don't normally talk to at church, but I find myself hesitant because of anxiety/shyness. So, social anxiety is something that I deal with personally. I don't really get to, especially being in the position I'm in, I don't really get to say, oh, I'm just not going to talk to people. So I've really had to work on this myself. The best thing that I have personally is having a friend help, right? So when you go into a situation alone, that can be very nerve-wracking. You don't know what to say. You don't know where to fill in the gaps, all that type of stuff. So when you have another person who's there, perhaps that they're a little bit more social than you, or they just know different things than you, you guys can help balance each other out. And that's one of the things that I found very helpful with having a girlfriend who's sociable, because she's really good at talking to people. And then I can kind of filter in there and talk about other things. So really working as a team has helped us a lot as well. But just doing it with any friend who is willing to go and wants to get to know people as well, I think that would be the most beneficial thing. And plus you get to know other people and you get to know the person you go to them with. So I think it's a win-win-win.
Win-win.
You have any other ideas, Charlie?
So, I think a good place to start would just be, if you're just nervous about talking to people, start with small stuff, whenever you just see people out in public, just saying, hello or hey, or how's it going? Very simple little things like that. You don't have to just immediately walk up and go into some deep conversation with somebody. It can just be little subtle things you can work on. If someone holds the door for you, just saying thank you, verbally communicating to that person, just starting with that kind of stuff, just to kind of get used to how to, start a conversation, or how to, begin talking, or, opening up and saying something to somebody. And then it can also be, plan ahead, I guess, too. If you know that there's going to be people that you want to talk to, whether it's at church or outside of church, there's nothing wrong with going up to somebody, having a conversation that you want to have already in mind, or knowing what you're already going to say to kind of start it off with. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Whether it's you see something out in town that somebody else that would like, or that they could relate to, and you just want to go talk to them about that and bring that up, I think could be a good way to kind of start a conversation. Yeah. Could lead to more too. Just little things like that. And then over time, you just kind of get used to the idea of talking to people, and I think it can become easier the more you do it. So
that's a really good idea. I hadn't even thought of it that way. So,
but yeah, there you go.
Do you struggle with social anxiety too?
Not too bad, if I'm being just purely honest. I don't know. I was always the kid, growing up, that would whenever my friends wanted to ask somebody something and they didn't want to, they would always send me to ask them, because I never cared too much, just because I apparently would just get lost in a building of people. My parents would lose me because I'd want to go and like introduce myself to like everybody. It's like a 3-year-old kid, like, "Hi, I'm Charlie. Nice to meet you." So, like, I don't know why I did that, but I don't know. I like talking to people.
That's good.
So
I think I enjoy talking to people, but also like if you call me, I'm going through it in my head. I'm like, is this person going to tell me they hate me? If the elders call me, are they going to fire me? And like genuinely, that's my thought. So it's a struggle.
Yeah.
But it's just something you work through. So, next question: what is y'all's favorite part of podcasting? So I have here that for me, it was basically necessary for me to add Charlie to this podcast.
wow.
It was because yes, absolutely. Like we bounce off of each other well in real life already, and I definitely wanted to do this with another person. And especially like these podcasts, they can be an hour long. Our recording sessions usually take upwards of 3 hours because we'll literally turn off the camera and then we'll just sit there and laugh and talk about other things and go through and have other discussions. So it's been really nice to between the takes, and you'll get a little bit of that in the bloopers, but between the takes, getting to know my friend and brother a lot more. So another thing that I also really like is as we've gone through and we've kind of come up with this is also what our podcast is about, and the emphasis in our faith about loving God and loving people. Every time we kind of get to the conclusion, we're like, oh yeah, you're supposed to love one another. And just seeing how clear that is and how many of the world's problems, the church problems, our problems with each other would be fixed if we just did the most basic commands that we were given. Well, also the most important. So I've really appreciated that about the podcast. I also think that I like to talk a lot more than I thought I did. So that's just another thing.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well,
Charlie?
I love you, brother. That's
man.
no.
I love you too.
So I think for me, like everything that you said is 100% true. But I also like the idea of like I've gotten to study topics that I probably wouldn't have otherwise like really actually looked at. Like doing like the video breakdowns and stuff like that, and really seeing like other arguments that people make and trying to dive into like very relevant things to today is something that like, you know, I didn't necessarily do as much before, but this really gives me a reason to dive into some deeper topics that, you know, we kind of tend to shy away from sometimes. And so getting to look at some of that, I think has been really cool. You know, for me, whenever I like sit down and want to study the Bible, it really helps me if I have like a specific thing that I'm trying to study instead of just like, let me just open up to a random page. I'm going to study this today. Like I like to have like an idea of like, you know, like a specific thing that I'm actually trying to like study or like glean. It kind of helps me. So like a lot of the topics that we've gone through, I think have really been beneficial to me and have helped me, you know, look at things that I was taught growing up or the way that, you know, I do things because it's the way I've always done it, and kind of challenge a lot of my beliefs that I had and, you know, change hopefully for the better. Yeah. But yeah, so I guess getting to do like a variety of really fun topics has been my favorite part.
Well, that's awesome. I think we have challenged each other and you on this podcast a lot because like there are some things, especially about fasting, that when we delved into that, it's like, man, I don't do this enough. I don't think about this enough. So yeah, that has been a very fun part of this. All right. Third question. I'm going to have you go first on this one. If you could only sing one hymn for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a good one. And that's a tough one because, you know, you got to think about a lot of things with that. Because, like, am I going to get tired of the song after I've sung it for, like, the 3,000th time? Like, you got to have something that's timeless, something that's relevant always.
Okay.
No, so for me, it's probably be It As Well With My Soul. I think I kind of mentioned it for the first time I was on this podcast. You asked me what my favorite hymn was, and it has not changed. That's probably still my favorite, just because it's got a really great story behind why it was written, the person that wrote it, and what had happened in his life when he wrote that hymn. I think is just fantastic and really touching and very encouraging. And you really feel his emotions in the song of what was going on and just how powerful it is. And that's a song that I think I really relate to in a lot of ways. And it just means a lot to me. And it's one of those that I can't really sing without, you know, getting choked up every time I sing it. So maybe after singing it several thousand times, I could finally make it through without breaking down. So no, that would probably, if I had to just pick one, that would probably be it.
I've come to appreciate that hymn a lot more, just like the emphasis of assurance of the faith. It's like you're not just one sin from God being like, no. It's like, this is forever. So it's
a tough question, though. Good
that
question.
Is a good question.
That's a fun one.
My hymn that I chose is also my favorite hymn, Be Thou My Vision. I've really come to appreciate the song because when I would say I was lost, where I just took this kind of break from being a Christian, being religious, whatever else. And I just remember this being in this pit of, I don't see what my future holds. I don't see what hope comes next. Yeah. And then coming out of that and feeling like I was blind and now I can see. Now I have something to look forward to and hope in. I also think it's just a beautiful hymn. There's a lot of different versions of it, but I think like you lead that thing well. It is one of the best hymns that's been written, and I really appreciate. And I also sing it to myself a lot anyway. So you'll catch me humming it or singing it because I love that one. So, Be Thou My Vision. If you haven't heard it, what are you doing? Listen to it now.
That's fantastic.
Alrighty. Ooh, Andrea peppered us with questions and we love it. Here's another one from her. She says, what is your reasoning behind who y'all think the Hebrew writer is? You have a strong opinion about this, Charlie?
I hate this question so much. I've been asked this question so many times. I don't know why. I've been asked this question so many times in my life. Like,
if you don't know the answer, you're not going to heaven.
That's that's what God's going to ask you is who wrote Hebrews, and if you don't have a good reason behind it, I don't know. I don't want to answer this because I have no. I feel like we judge people based off of what they answer this question. Like, oh, you're one of those Paul wrote Hebrews kind of people. Like, like I don't know. I heard a really good theory the other day that I hadn't heard before about it being like a sermon. Mm-hmm. I'd never heard that before. I actually after reading it through again, that kind of makes sense. They thought it was a sermon that Paul gave, and I'm like, I don't know about that. I've heard reasons for Apollos that are good. I've heard reasons for Barnabas that are pretty good. I've heard reasons for James actually being somewhat decent, or one of Jesus' other brothers potentially writing it as well. So obviously it was somebody that was Jewish more than likely. It'd be kind of weird if a Gentile could somehow know that much about Jewish history. Mm-hmm. So it was somebody who was obviously extremely knowledgeable in the old law that also loved Jesus and knew a lot about him too. So it could have been any of the apostles. It could have been any of the brothers of Jesus, or I don't know. If I say something, I'm just going to get judged. So
well, I'm going to take the judgment and go ahead and say that not only do I think it's Barnabas, I know it's Barnabas.
Ooh, man.
But for me, when it comes to Barnabas, two roles play a significant factor in why I think it's Barnabas. If you don't know, he is a Levite. So we have that revealed to us in the book of Acts. So as you read through Hebrews, as Charlie was mentioning, it is seeped in talking about the Old Testament. He will have these parts where he just starts quoting it back to back to back, different verses, different passages. It also emphasizes a lot of things about the priest, the high priest, Moses, the tabernacle, the law, all these things that a Levite would be not only familiar with, but before you come to Jesus, that is his life. That is his legacy. His heritage is all about being a Levite, right? So he's going to know the Tanakh well. And I think that this shows it's obviously a Jew who's found hope in Jesus that cannot be found in the old law. And I think that it also goes to show that he also knows the temptation to go back. To be tempted to be lured back into rituals or traditions or whatever else. But the only hope is in Jesus. So I also think that when we have a book like the one of Hebrews where it doesn't have any name, from what I see about Barnabas being an encourager, I think he plays a lot more from the background. So even if he were to write this incredible book, I don't think he'd be the type of person, I don't know him personally, but I don't think he'd be the type of person to put his name on it, because I think he would think this would take away from the name of Jesus. This would distract from the message. So just based off of those two things, I'm not very, like, again, I was joking. I'm not dogmatic that it was Barnabas. But what I do know and think about Barnabas as a character, I think that this book was written by him. So that is my opinion. And there's my justification.
Yeah, and I don't. If the sermon theory is true, it also makes sense why his name's not on it either. Because I don't know, because there's not really it's not written super like a letter, because otherwise he probably would have signed it. But I don't know. That's like asking me who wrote Ecclesiastes. I'm going to give you a 20-minute answer. Basically, I don't know. So I don't know.
It happens.
The answer is it doesn't matter. That's the answer.
Oh, true.
The message is true either way. So
there we go. Checkmate.
Yep.
All right. And her final question. This was a really good one too. I had to think a little bit about this one. What Bible event outside of Jesus' life would you want to see?
Yeah.
Which one do you
So
think?
when I was a kid, I would have straight up said Noah, just because I thought that was the coolest story ever, where a dude built a massive boat that housed every 2 or 7 of every animal on the earth, which is just an incredible engineering feat. And I was super nerdy. So I just wanted to see, did it actually look like a boat? What did it look like? Was it just a ratty piece of wood put together that God sealed up, or was it actually like a boat? I don't know. That was what it was when I was a kid. I thought it was really cool. Yeah. For a time, it was the Garden of Eden, because I just have so many questions about the Garden of Eden. But now recently, would be the Tower of Babel, for sure. Just because Genesis 11 and 6, it says, "And the Lord said, Behold, they are one people, and they all have one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do, and nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them." That to me is one of the most interesting verses in the Bible, because it's God talking about people of the world, and he's genuinely perplexed at how strong, I guess, humanity had gotten, what we can do if we put all of our minds together. Obviously we're not God, but God made us in his image, and he gave us the ability to think and to reason and to solve problems. And so when you have one massive group of people that are all unified together, God basically says, well, they have no limit. They can achieve anything. And so, for me, when I look at today and society and how technologically advanced, I feel like we're getting, I'm very curious how advanced they had got as a society. I don't know.
And they're able to think.
So were they able, how deep into science, all these different things had they gotten? Or was it just because it was a very arrogant group of people and God wanted to humble them? That also could have been it. But I don't know. That'd be interesting to see what it looked like, at least.
So you think the Tower of Babel is a modern day skyscraper? You think it was that advanced, or?
I think it was, I don't know. I don't really know anything about it. I think it was more or less the attitude of the people as to why God probably wanted to take them down a notch. But I am very curious how advanced it was. But yeah, I'd probably relate it to probably a big altar is probably what it looked like. I don't know. I always envisioned it as a pyramid in my mind, because I don't know, the Egyptians built those a very long time ago, and they're very strong. They were very advanced. So
that's true.
I don't know. It's cool. But yeah, good question.
Interesting one. Yeah. For me, I thought my serious one would be the walls of Jericho. I feel like this would be a really interesting thing to see, and part of it in my mind is not seeing how these walls fall, because if you don't, I did a little bit of research on Jericho, but there's 2 walls. So they had a retaining wall and then and these are 8-foot thick walls. So do they just melt into the ground, or do they just topple over like Legos? I have no idea. So I think that would be cool to watch. Yep. But I also kind of want to have just an image of what happens when the horn blows and it starts falling apart. Because I feel I think in my mind, the people of Jericho were always freaking out, oh, I feel like people of Israel had to be wait, we just walked around this and blew the horns and it worked? They had to have their minds blown too.
It was the sound waves from the trumpet. It vibrated at the natural frequency of the walls of Jericho and caused them to crumble.
Oh no.
Science.
That's not how it works. But yeah, so I think that would be a really cool story to see. My funnier one would be Jonah and the whale, or fish.
Oh, I was going to say.
Whichever way you take it.
But you could have proved whether it was a whale or not.
Okay, the Hebrew word literally just means large sea creature, so we don't know what it is.
The Loch Ness Monster.
It could be Loch Ness Monster. But so I want to know, like, when the fish vomits Jonah out, does it just like literally just out into the water, or does he get just he just spits him out onto the shore? Like I think in VeggieTales, that's what happens to him. Just get so I don't know, and I think that would be pretty. That's my funny one. Like I wonder how that happened.
Yeah,
probably pretty gross either way.
I love the stipulation that she gave of it had to be outside of Jesus' life.
I know.
When the reality of the situation is, I probably would have chosen the Tower of Babel anyways.
Wait, really?
I mean, just straight up honest.
You don't want to see the resurrected Jesus?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, no, I
goodness.
do, but I'll see Jesus someday. That's the thing. So, like, I'll get to see the resurrected Jesus someday. Hopefully.
So you don't buy into the theory that in heaven, God just has this movie theater where you can just go in there and watch, like, all the things that are in the Bible or something like that?
It doesn't exist.
It
Cool.
might, yeah, dude.
But I don't know. I know I'll get to see Jesus, but I don't know I'll get to go see the Tower of Babel.
All right. Well,
boom.
interesting.
Think about that, guys.
Oh, all righty. I think they are really getting our personality now. Like,
oh, man.
Well, first of all, thank you, Andrew, again for your questions. Do you want to keep doing more and then finish at, let's see, favorite book of the Bible?
Sure.
All right, let's do that. So we have another friend and listener, Mary Catherine Malloy, send us in 2 questions. Thank you again.
Thanks,
and huge shout out to the Malloys. They left today. We're going to miss you guys and we love you very much. Please be safe. Enjoy your new job in life, but don't forget about us. So anyway, Mary Catherine sent us 2 questions. She asks, firstly, favorite woman in the Bible? Great question. Really like this one. My 2 that I had, I couldn't choose between them, was Abigail and Hannah. So Abigail is, she is the former wife of Nabal and then wife of David, like second wife of David. But her story is literally David acting like a complete idiot and then Nabal acting like his name means fool, like a complete idiot. And here she is putting her life on the line for these 2 idiots so that they have peace and just showing her courage and her wisdom and her temperament into that. I think that, as blessed as I feel as a male made in the image of God, I do see that tendency in males to just kind of like turn off my brain and just do something dumb, and to see that type of patience and temperament, it's a story that I've really come to appreciate a lot. And yeah, she's just an empathetic person. I've also really come to appreciate Hannah a lot. I'm studying through 1 Samuel right now, and just reading her prayer again and her devotion to prayer has really convicted me, because in a lot of ways, even after doing a podcast on prayer, sometimes it feels like I got to rush it in at the end of the day. I got to get my little 10 minutes in before I go to the bed, because I need to go to bed after I've already stayed up for forever watching YouTube and stuff like that. And it's just having that type of devotion and pouring yourself out, and Hannah's just a great character for that,
sure.
So,
yeah, I would say because of a really cool story is Jael. She's pretty awesome in Judges, classic, And she was during the time of Deborah, which is also a cool woman in the Bible.
For sure.
That's just kind of like a fun one, just because it'd be cool just to witness that, and just how much courage it took for her to kill the King Sisera. That's really cool. But then the one that I'd probably, if I tried to choose one, would probably be Anna, the prophetess in Luke 2. We know basically nothing about her other than she was a prophetess in the New Testament, had extremely strong faith. She was a widow for a very long time. She was 84 years old and prayed and fasted and wanted to meet Jesus. And so, I don't know, it'd be really cool to sit down and have a conversation with her about what it's like to be a female prophet, because it's not really the first thing that we typically think of when we think of a prophet, especially in New Testament time. So it's not even, being a prophet in the Old Testament is one thing, but being one in the New Testament before Jesus is about to come, I don't know. I feel like it'd be a cool conversation to see. So. I'm curious what other people's opinions of her were, being a woman in the temple, prophesying. So
that's a good one.
And most people don't think about her. She kind of gets overlooked a lot.
That's true.
Luke 2. That's just a few verses about her.
That's a deep track right there.
So,
all right. And her final question, her second question, was favorite book of the Bible. All right, Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah, so if an Old Testament would probably be Job. For a long time it was Ecclesiastes, but it kind of became Job, and not just the first 2 chapters of Job.
Ooh.
The whole thing. Actually, my favorite part is the conversation that God has. Well, Job has with his friends, and then God has with Job at the end. I think they're fantastic, and I think it's whether or not it's true or real or just a story. Either way, it's a very, very good story that we have and is relatable, I think, in a lot of ways when we go through different doubts and different problems in life we have as we go through challenges. And, it's one that I relate to a lot. When I've gone through struggles, a lot of the questions that I've asked and where I've reasoned myself to is a lot of where Job ended up. So someone who was very strong and had great faith somehow reasoned himself to, I'm not a good person. And so, I don't know. Great story, great book. And then New Testament would probably be Revelation. I've always had a soft spot for it because a lot of people are afraid of it. So I think it's another fantastic book. It's one that you can read 100 times and it's new every time you read it. A lot of the language that's used and a lot of the imagery that's used is really cool and connects to some Old Testament books as well, which I think is really neat. And then hearing all the different theories of what people believe Revelation means is also fun. So
that's a good one. For me, it changes a lot, of course, but my favorite currently Old Testament is Malachi. I love the Minor Prophets a lot, and that one I think is really applicable to our age, where there's a lot of hypocrisy, there's a lot of idolatry, there's a lot of just self-centeredness, and Malachi shows to destroy that, and the only way that you do it is through the coming Lord in Jesus. So I love Malachi a lot. I also love the New Testament, James, which has been pretty consistently my favorite. It's the first and only book that I've ever handwritten. I didn't write it myself, cool. But I wrote it out, and it's really stuck with me. And similar to your application from Job, James talks a lot about persecution and trials and going through that. And it really helped me when my grandmother passed. The first James 1, 2 through 4 are my favorite verses in the Bible, and it's just this reminding that when testing comes, it's not just so that God's like, ugh. It's literally to produce something new in you, to produce this faith and trust in you. So I've really come to appreciate that book a lot too.
James is fantastic. It's such a dense book. Like it's so short, and there's just so much he fits into that. Yeah. It's amazing.
And he just pops you in the mouth. Yeah. Like he doesn't hold back.
That's fair.
It's a good one.
And it's also cool, I don't know, the whole aspect of him being Jesus' brother, and you see this guy come a complete circle from when you see him last, when he's ridiculing Jesus and being like, hey man, what are you doing? Just shut up and come home. And then all of a sudden he obviously has a great understanding of Jesus and who he is. There's so much in such a little bit. So it's one that you if you ever just want to read a book, you don't know where to do. I feel like James, because it's
15 minutes probably.
Literally just read through it. And so much helpful information.
So really good one. Thank you again, Mary Catherine, for your questions. So we have a couple more that are left, but this will be it for this section. We'll be right back. Our next question comes from yet another friend and faithful listener to the podcast, Andrew Sullivan. Thank you so much for your question. It's a really good one too. He asks us, what has been the biggest doubt that you've had and what helped reassure you?
Yeah, so I answer this in 2 ways. So one, just general life, biggest doubt I've had in life. And the other one is spiritual doubt. So in life, the biggest doubt that I've probably ever had is just general failure. I don't know, the idea of just failing at something, whether that's in school, failing a class, or not getting a job, or I don't know, just anytime I try to set myself to doing something, not achieving that, and failing was probably my biggest fear in life in general. So trying to overcome that, still working on it. I'll let you know when I figure it out. But no, I just try to remind myself that it's okay to make, a mistake. You don't have to, be the best at every single thing. So sometimes you're going to mess up, sometimes you're going to fall short, and, that's okay. But the most important thing is if you get back up and you keep going. That sounded so cliche.
Hey. It works.
But yeah, so spiritual doubt. The biggest doubt overall. I've had a lot, but probably the one that has been with me like my entire life, that's still with me heavily today, is just the general question of, am I good enough? So like I feel like something that never gets mentioned in the church is grace, or at least doesn't get mentioned. It gets mentioned, but not very often. And if it does, it's just like God's grace, and then we skip over it and move on. Like we know God has grace, but like we don't ever really just like to dive deep into it, because I feel like people are just afraid of grace because they don't want to like take it too far or something, or like how far is too far. And because of this, I feel like, you know, we have this culture of being like merciless, and, you know, where a single mistake, one little thing that you do will send you straight to hell. Like there's literally no room for grace at all, because we don't ever like talk about it or think about it, or we're afraid of it because like we're afraid of what grace would mean, of like, you know, oh, you mean that person can go to heaven too? Like, I think we're afraid of that idea sometimes. We don't want to admit it, but like having no grace and like leads to basically like having no mercy, where you're kind of like heartless. And so kind of being raised in that culture of never really being taught grace, and, you know, hearing the way people would react to where when someone would come out with struggling with some kind of sin or whatever, when the judgment starts, and, you know, different things that happen, you really scared me and like kind of messed me up, I feel like, mentally, where it's just like now I don't feel like I'm ever good enough. You know, I'm generally afraid, like, you know, if I were to die right now, am I really good enough? So, and I don't think I'm alone in that. I've talked to other people that struggle with a similar thing. And so something that I've done to work on this and try to help is, you know, in recent years, you know, I would say my wife has helped me a lot with this, but also just studying about grace and really meditating about the idea of grace and accepting that, you know, just because I do mess up once, or those people that I saw mess up when I was a kid, right, that's okay. You know, just reading about and studying about people and characters in the Bible that, you know, messed up or sinned in their life and were very imperfect people. And even in their imperfection, God is able to make them perfect. And so, yeah, a really good book that I read that really illustrated it well was The Great Divorce. C.S. Lewis, the beginning of the book, I think kind of illustrates this idea of like, you know, I don't really want to get too into it. Read the book. It's fantastic. But basically, you know, you're never too far away to come back. The invitation to go to heaven is offered to everybody, but you have to go to the bus stop and get on the bus and actually go and stay. And so, you know, anybody is open to that. No matter how messed up you are, no matter how far away you get, you can still go back. And so, yeah, that's stuff that I've thought about. Again, still working on it. I'll let you know when I figure it out.
Yeah. So I feel that a lot when I started studying more and more and seeing that the crazy imperfection of some of the people we've held up in the Old Testament, stuff like that. These are heroes of faith, all this type of stuff. Abraham was willing to just let his wife go.
Yeah.
And it's like, these aren't good people, but through faith, you know, God has mercy on them, and that same grace is extended to us. So I do think that's a concept that we have really. I think we're too worried about what other people think and other type of stuff instead of just what Scripture says. And that's something we should probably do a podcast about, talking about grace. That's a good one. So I appreciate those two from Charlie. My doubts, I'm going to go fall in Charlie's suit and say, so my biggest life doubt probably falls in one of my biggest fears, and that is being lonely. So not just like, oh, I didn't find a wife, but also no one actually really likes me. They just keep me around either as their token black guy or as, whatever else. So I have that constant worry of, are my friends actually my friends? If I stop giving or I stop acting, will they still like me and hang around? So I've been working on that. And this reminder that even when I am alone, I have Jesus has been very comforting in that. And having people who really do care, and you can tell because, you know, I've been pretty forgetful. and oftentimes a pretty bad friend recently, just because I've had a lot going on in my mind. But seeing people offering up of themselves and helping me out and showing they care has really been helpful in this time. So that's mine, my life one. And then my spiritual one would probably be the authority and how we got the scripture. I've talked about this a little bit on the podcast because it used to be my biggest, what if everything that was written to us was really written by just some dudes who made this entire crazy conspiracy and somehow wrote this incredible book over this many years and just put it together? Or what if the Catholic Pope just smudged it together, or all this type of stuff? And that became a real genuine worry and concern of mine. Especially, I took a class in college at a Christian college that really pushed me to be like, where did we get this book from? Like, how did we receive this? How do we know that it's got, any evidence or proof or all that type of stuff? And what it took was just study. And the more I studied about how we have received the scripture, the more I studied about, let's compare what we know about Jesus and the manuscripts about Jesus, or the manuscripts we have for the Bible, compared to these other ancient texts. And comparatively, there is no comparison. We have so much evidence. And then we keep finding new Dead Sea Scrolls like every 50 years. And it's like, it's a treasure trove. It's incredible. So I'm very convinced by the inspiration of the scriptures now. And that is probably one of my more passionate topics about how I can kind of tell you a little bit. I can give a little crash course on how we got scripture, why I believe it's inspired, all that type of stuff. So that was a huge doubt for me. Now I feel like one of my strongest suits.
Yeah, so that's really good.
Yeah, man. So if you have any questions about the Bible and how we got it, I'll probably go on our blog at some point. But yeah, I would love to talk to you about it. So, all right. Thank you, Andrew, for that question.
Thanks, Sully.
It was a good one. All right. So your wife asked us some questions.
She did.
Whoop, whoop. And
So the first one she asks us is, what is your favorite thing about each other? She knows I spend a lot of time with Alexander, so she gets jealous. It's fine. Not really. No, favorite thing about, I don't know, what's your favorite thing about me, Alexander?
My favorite thing about Charlie isn't gonna get sappy. I'm sorry, guys. My favorite thing about Charlie is probably like one of the more heartfelt people I have ever met in my life, where he's very giving and very caring. And in a lot of ways, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's very honest about that. And I've come to really appreciate that because we were trying to address this before, but our first real conversation, we talked about him losing his mom and me losing my grandmother. And I don't try to compare the magnitude of those two things, but they've both made us into the men we are today. And just being able to talk to someone and be real with them about that has bonded me to Charlie probably for the rest of time. So I really appreciate him and his care and his compassion. And we're also, very competitive. We're very competitive when it comes to how we handle pretty much any situation. But I really have come to appreciate his push. So he's a good servant and a good, just a great guy. So proud to have him as a friend.
I appreciate it. Yeah. So my favorite thing about you, if I just had to pick one, because there's just so many. No. Well, there are, but I the thing that I probably love the most about you is just how much peace you give. And you may be like, what is he talking about? Like you were probably one of the most, like, whenever I spend time with you or hang out with you, like, I probably get more peace out of that than I do in like any other situation in my life. Like, I don't.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm tearing up a little bit.
It's
bro.
just like, yeah, I don't know whether that's from the conversations that we have and the things that we talk about, and things like talking about losses that we've had and growing stronger through that kind of stuff. But peace is something that I want really, really bad in life, and I feel like I get that so much from you because you're just so comforting and you just always have really good advice and really good answers. And so, yeah.
Wow. Man, okay.
Yeah. Moving on. Next question. All right, we're just gonna go. The next question Anna asks is if you could go back in time and tell your 13-year-old self one thing, what would it be? And I don't know why she chose the age 13, but I get right in the middle of adolescence.
Yeah.
Still trying to move on.
You're working through your hormones and stuff.
Yeah, that's a confusing time. Just got my braces off, Started liking girls. It was All right. 13-year-old self. So there's a lot of things that I would want to say. Don't do engineering. Try not. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's oh man, I don't know. Do you have one like off the top of your head, like what you would say?
So, I'm like you. There's plenty of things that I'm like, man, I wish I would tell myself this. But at 13, like, what do I think I need to hear? Probably is your parents really do love and care about you, and you kind of need to stop reading into that. Because I think my fear was I saw my parent, my dad was the one who usually spanked me, and mom was on my tail because my grades weren't always the best, and I was being lazy, and I wasn't doing my chores and all this type of stuff. And, my parents weren't perfect or anything like that. But coming out on the other side of it and seeing the obvious love and care that they put into it, and hearing a little bit about what they grew up in and ways they wanted to improve, they put their lives on the limb for me and my siblings. Yeah. So, and they gave all their money and still continue to do that for us. So just really having that appreciation of my parents at that age, I think that would have helped a lot of things in high school, where I just kind of went on this rebellious phase instead of understanding how much they loved and cared. So that's good. I think I would have said that.
Yeah, I guess like trying to get into the mind of like things that were really important to me when I was 13, and going like from middle school and high school, if I could go back and tell myself one thing, is that you do not have to be the most well-liked person in like your class or like in your friend group. Like so much high school drama, middle school drama was going on. Like, I just wanted to be liked and popular and just be in like the cool crowd, I sound like 40 years old. But like if I could just go back and reassure myself, like you don't give up who you are just that you can be liked or you think you're going to be more well-liked to try to fit into a specific group in school, because it's the second you graduate from high school, all that stuff it's gone. Yeah. Like a lot of those friends, people that you hung out with, right, or all that drama, it just suddenly like leaves and it's gone. It doesn't matter. So all that stuff you care about in high school doesn't matter. So yeah,
that's a good one.
Thanks, Anna. That was good. All right. One more. So this is your brother-in-law. Brother-in-law Trey.
Shout out to Trey. Thank you for your question.
T-Rex.
All right. He asks us, what is the meaning of life? And we both of us saw it fitting that we use Ecclesiastes 12. You want to read that? We have it out there.
Yeah. So Ecclesiastes 12, 13, and 14. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil.
Yeah. So I think the whole purpose of life, the whole duty of man, is to fear God and keep his commandments. I also put in here just my personal quote of keep your eyes on Jesus and help others to do the same. So my life goal is like I found purpose and hope in Jesus. I want other people to find purpose and hope in Jesus, whether that be they are already Christians or they aren't Christians yet. So that's the meaning. And
the only one that I would look at is again one that we have really kind of embodied in this podcast and the conclusion that we've come to in the podcast, and that is in Matthew 22, 33 through 40, and that says, "But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. 'Teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law?' He said to him, 'You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets.'" So, if you want to try to find a purpose in life, something to try to do, to find the meaning, I think that's it right there. It's just love the Lord and love your neighbor with everything that you have. And I think if you do those two things, then everything else will fall in suit, and you're gonna do everything else that you're gonna find in Scripture. And in those 2 commands fall every other command, and every other thing that we're ever asked to do could be fit into one of those 2 categories. So
for sure,
the Pilgrim song, a podcast about love.
There we go. Our secondary song.
The deep cut motto.
So this was super fun. Like, honestly, I'm really thankful for your questions. Thank you,
we got
Trey,
some
again.
good ones.
So super fun. Of course, good to have my bud Charlie on here, and we were able to. You definitely saw our personality a lot more in this one because we're a mess. But yeah, and you'll see even more of our personality this upcoming Wednesday when we drop a blooper reel of some of our hot takes and other just weird shenanigans that sometimes happens back here. There's some really good stuff there. So, are you nervous about the blooper reel?
I'm more excited to see. I forgot about some of the stuff we've said and done. So I don't know how you're going to edit that. Well, have fun.
It'll be hilarious. But so yeah.
Just know, this is not, we don't fake any of this.
We do not.
We have like scripts in front of us, but a lot of what we do is very off the cuff. Yeah, you'll get to see that. So
yeah. But again, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for entering your questions. This was really good and really fun. Again, the website will be up, Lord willing. The blog will be up next week. Blooper Reel Wednesday, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Maybe some merch coming out soon.
Maybe some merch, hopefully. We're trying. We're working our best. There's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah. All right. You have anything else to say, Charlie, before you head out?
I don't. Again, appreciate all the questions, guys. That was really great, and we'll have to do this again.
Yes.
Maybe at episode 50.
Episode 50 might be our Christmas episode.
Hey.
There you go. All right, guys. So thank you. Have a blessed week, and we will see you next week.